Hello Legacy Sabers, Marsh here. So today we're going to talk about generally equations of a conic, aka completing the square round 2. You're going to want your notebook and a pencil. You might want a calculator, and then you're also going to want to be definitely using your thinking cap and also your ears today. So if you're not listening to me right now because you're deciding to go fast on this video, you're definitely going to want to go one speed on this video. So, the equation of any conic can be written in a very general form. It looks something like this. ax squared plus bxy plus cy squared plus dx plus ey plus f equals 0. And this is what's called the second degree general equation of a conic. Now, as you can imagine, this equation is not very useful. Can't really graph anything with that. We can't find, let's say if it was a circle, we couldn't find the radius. So a lot of times we're going to need to know, how can I make that really stupid long equation something useful? So circles, normally they look like this. This was a circle that would have a center of 1, -2, and have a radius of 4. Well, if I multiply that all out, it would actually look something like this. X squared plus y squared equals -2 minus 2x plus 4y minus 11 equals 0. So the bottom equation is equivalent to the top equation. Notice though, guys, that one is a lot more, it's tricky to see that, right? Parabolas, on the other side of that, he would look something like this. Y squared minus 12y plus 4x plus 4 equals 0. So that one's not as useful as the top, because the top tells me I have a vertex of 8, 6, and then my p-value would be -1. So this would be in a parabola that's facing toward the left, correct? So how do you know which conic it is when it's been multiplied out? Well, you got to pay attention to who's squared and who's not. And you also need to look at the coefficients, the numbers in front of the squared terms and their signs. The two that we have already looked at in our life. We've looked at circles. If you want to know if it's a circle before you start to manipulate it, is x and y are going to both be squared. And the coefficients are going to be the same number and the same sign. So if I look at this equation here, this general form, I notice that the x squared and the y squared here, these guys, right here and right there, they are squared. Notice the x and y are both squared, and they both are addition with a 1 in front. They're the same number and sign. Parabolas are a little different. You're either going to have an x or a y squared, but they're not going to be both present. And, whoops. So here's an equation of a parabola. Notice, I don't have an x squared. I just have a y squared. There is not an x squared term in there. That's how you know immediately that you have a parabola, not a circle. Now, what if we wanted to graph the equation that's in the general form? Well, we need to get to standard form. And it's kind of a lengthy process, but once you get used to it, it's actually not too bad. Here's the steps to do this, aka complete the square. We completed the square about first quarter, I'd want to say, and this is just a little bit more muscular, if I want to say it that way. So first step you're going to want to do, you're going to want to group the x's and the y's. You're going to put the boys with the boys and the girls with the girls, okay? Send the constants, aka the numbers without an x or a y, to the other side of the equal sign. We're going to kind of move it over so we don't have to deal with them. The coefficient of x squared and y squared must be 1. If not, we're going to factor out. Then we're going to take the number before the x, divide by 2, and square. Remember, guys, that's how we found that blank in when we were doing complete the square. We divided b by 2 and squared it. We're going to do the same with the number before y. We're going to add to both sides of the equation, because if you add blank to the left, you got to add blank to the right. Careful if we do factor out something we do need to multiply. I'll show you what that looks like in a bit. And then we're going to factor. So let's try a couple of examples of this. Because I know this, right now you're like, that's a lot of steps. I don't know if I like this. Let's try a couple of examples before we get really worried about all the steps. So, I have this equation here. X squared plus y squared plus 6x minus 2y plus 9. And that equals 0. So the first thing I look at this, I notice I have an x squared and a y squared. That tells me this is a circle. So that tells me this equation's going to have to look something with an x squared plus y squared equals a number. So, first step of our completing the square. Get the x's with the x's and the y's with the y's. So we're going to move the x people together. I'm going to put them in a group here. And then I'm going to get the y squared people together, or the y people, and I'm going to move the 9 to the other side. So all I did is just kind of manipulated, move the x's together, move the y's together, and then move the number, the constant, to the other side. Now notice, guys, there is nothing with the x squared. It's just a 1, and so the same thing with the y squared. So we don't have to factor anything out. But to complete the square, you must only have a 1 here. So now what I need to do is I need to complete the square on the x's and complete the square on the y's. So let's complete the square with the x's first. So x squared plus 6x plus blank. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with my y's. Now here's the thing. On the right hand side, we're actually going to have 2 blanks. So we're going to have a blank for whatever I put with the x's, and a blank with whatever I put the y's is. So, right here, to find blank, little side story here. To find blank, you want to take your b term, divided by 2, and square it. So, I'm going to go 6 divided by 2, 3, square that, 9. Now, if there's a 9 over here, I better put the 9 over here too. Take this number, divide that by 2. That would be negative 1. Square that, 1. Put a 1 over here. Now, I can factor this side. So, x squared plus 6x plus 9. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me 9, but add together to give me 6. 3 and 3, right? X plus 3? Well, it would be 2x plus 3's, which would be x plus 3 quantity squared. That's equivalent to that. What's this one? I need 2 numbers to multiply to give me 1. Add together to give me negative 2. Well, that would be y minus 1 and another y minus 1. So y minus 1 squared equals negative 9 plus 9. I have 0 plus 1. 1. And look, it looks exactly like a circle, like we said. Now, this circle would have a center of negative 3, 1, and it would have a radius of 1. Notice this is a much more useful equation for that conic. But this, if I would remultiply it out, should get me back to that equation as well. Let's try another one. So I got x squared plus 8x plus 2y plus 24. Notice, first thing I notice on this equation, there's no y squared. So that tells me I have a parabola. So, parabolas, they always have blah 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 squared equals some number blah blah, right? Well, it looks like it's going to be an x that's going to be on this side because it's squared. So what I like to do is try to get the y over on the other side to get rid of him, just because we normally have them on separate sides of the equation on our standard form. So I'm going to put the x people together, and I'm going to move these guys over here. That's a minus 24. Okay, now, same game. I need to complete the square. Notice, your a on this x squared is 1, so I don't have to factor that out. So what I get to do is start completing the square immediately. Blank, 2, minus 24. And then I don't forget my blank over here. Number one thing I see students forget is they forget to add to both sides whatever they find. Definitely causes a problem later when you start to try to figure this out further. So, to find my blank, I divide the 8 by 2. That would be 4, and I square that. That'll give me 16. So I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Now I got to factor over here because I want to put that together. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 16, but add together to give you 8. 4 and 4, right? So this would be x plus 4 quantity squared. Well, what's on this side? Negative 24 plus 16. That's negative 8. So this is negative 2y minus 8. Now notice, guys, normally this didn't look like this, right? We always had a number out here and then a y, blah, 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 blah in there. So I need to factor something out. I need to undo that distributive, because right now it looks like there was a distributive property that happened, right? Well, it looks like negative 2 is shared between those two, so let's factor that out. And that would be a y plus 4. That way it gets into the general form. Now notice, guys, this would be an downwards facing parabola. It would have a vertex of negative 4, and my p-value would be negative 1/2, which would be a very difficult parabola to graph, but nevertheless, it would be a parabola. Let's try one more here. So I got 4x squared minus 16x plus 16y plus 32. I know it's a parabola because I don't have a y squared. So I'm going to get these terms to the other side because they aren't nearly needed on this left side here. Equals negative 16y minus 32. Now, notice, guys, this is the first time this has happened. I have a number in front of my x squared. So what we need to do is we need to GCF that. We need to take that out of the equation, or that parenthesis. You need to factor out a 4 out of both of those. So I'm going to be left with x squared minus 4x plus blank. Now, here's the problem. This blank on this side is not just a blank anymore. It's 4 times the blank. So you gotta kind of be careful. So I'm going to actually make a little note of that I need to do 4 times the blank. Otherwise, I forget. This is the second problem that students run into, is they forget to do the 4 times whatever they get on the other side. So let's find our blank. I'm going to divide this 4 by 2 and then square that. It's going to be a 4. So the blank over here is technically 4 times 4. Technically it's a 16 over there. So I got a 4. Factor that. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give you 4, but add together to give you negative 4. That'd be x minus 2 quantity squared. 4 times 16 is 64. Subtract the 32. So I get negative 16y plus 32 over there. Now notice, guys, normally we don't have a number sitting out front here, right? We've never seen that happen. So I'm going to divide away that number. Get rid of it. So I'm going to be with x minus 2 quantity squared equals negative 4y plus 8. And then again, we have to undo that distributive property that looks like it happened. And we'll get negative 4y minus 2. AKA a parabola that is downward facing, vertex of 2, 2. And that's the end of this video. See you later, Sabers.